12th, and we're doing our best sanity-wise as we keep trying to figure out how to set up tables. Let's see, for you guys, 7th period today is shorter. You end at 3:15 as opposed to 3:30. The reason being is that you are then going to go back to 1st period for iLearn. Make sure you bring your charged iPad with you for it because you're going to need it, so don't run your iPad down prior to that one. And then you'll do, I think today is English, and then the same thing again. Thursday it'll be a shorter one, and then Thursday will be the same thing, but for math. Hang on, Grant. And then did that. We do have quiz coming up this week, Outsiders-wise. I'm going to try and get us most of the way through Chapter 3, but you will have to read Chapter 4 and probably part of Chapter 3 on your own, but we'll get as far as we can. I added new pictures for you guys today we'll get to here in a moment, but that won't be till Friday, because Thursday we'll do some Outsiders. I'm going to do a lot of camp stuff on Thursday also, because we have to get ready for that. Grant?
Mrs. Mellon, for like 20 minutes in first period, was talking about how easy it is to put a tray up on, to put these trays up onto desks.
Wait, what? Why would you try
20
that?
minutes.
Maybe if they're upside down. Weird.
No, like this thing.
Oh, gotcha, because you could turn them? Yeah, fascinating. All right. Trace. Oh, God, no, I could care less. But a good try.
Can I throw this at your camera?
Those of you who don't want to read, because when we get farther into it, you'll have the audiobooks on there. I figure once we get to first quiz, we'll stop telling you guys about it. Yeah, here's the problem I have with tables. You guys are right next to people to talk to, so now I have to start moving more people. So many issues. Blah, blah, blah. Outsiders, let's get into attacking kids. I added that picture for you guys. I did that one yesterday. Did those guys. Did that thing. That guy's going to come back. We got to that. I stabbed a kid yesterday because then a kid got fascinated by it. Did the cools. And then the drive-in restaurant. Did that. Did drive-in movie theater. And showed you guys this one. And the little chairs up front.
Got to that. Got to that. Got to that. Got to that.
Alright, that's where we left off then.
No, there's another.
Dally came back with like the soda.
No.
We have not gotten further, so I have to wait a second. Let's see. We might have gotten past that one, did we? Oh, we did get just past that. Yeah.
18.
We are on page 28 with you guys.
Is that gum?
So, we have gotten to this with you guys, like page 28 again.
Bro, how does that guy pull?
So, they said what type of movie it was, and they said it was one of the old beach movies. So I went and looked up pictures of it, and this is what they were talking about. These, like, there was a whole series, like, now we have the Marvel movies. There was a whole series of movies starring like the same people, and literally all was like a bunch of teenagers who just went from like one beach to another doing like beach adventures. And so I went into it and just typed in 60s beach movies. There's like a whole wall of them that came up. It was weird. But yeah, anyway. We did Cheshire Cat. That was the one you guys were thinking about? Yeah. I think this part was, we had just gotten to it, hang on. No, we were just getting to this. All right, let's go back to here for a second. I'll explain that picture here in just a
You
moment.
already know that picture.
Right. Page 28, we're up there at the top. So home children, we're up in this area. All right. Where it says, I couldn't tell if 2-Bit was drunk or not. I couldn't tell if 2-Bit was drunk or not. It's kind of hard to tell with him. He acts boozed up sometimes, even when he's sober. He cocked one eyebrow up and the other down, which he always does when something puzzles him, or bothers him, or when he feels like he's saying something smart. Shoot, you're 96 if you're a day. I'm a knight, Marcia said brightly. 2-Bit stared at her admiringly. Brother, you're a sharp one. Where'd you two ever get to be picked up by a couple of greasy hoods like Pony and Johnny? We really picked them up, Marcia said. We're really Arabian slave traders, and we're thinking about shanghaiing them. They're worth 10 camels apiece, at least. That's where that picture comes in. What they're doing right now is this thing called flirting. When you're a teenager and you flirt, it feels like it makes a lot of sense when you're doing it, but anyone watching it from the outside goes, oh God, this is weird and creepy. So what's happening is 2-Bit is flirting with the girls, and the girls are flirting back, and they're like, oh, we're so funny. But from the outside, you're like, no, this is just weird and creepy. And this is what it feels like for teachers like all day when we watch you guys flirt with each other. And you're like, giggle, giggle, flirt, flirt. And we're like, it's just the way it goes.
What was the weirdest encounter of like two kids who are in a relationship or something?
Relationship.
Happened in your class or in the hallway?
Remind me at the end. I'll do my best to try to think there's some probably weird things. 5, 2-Bit disagreed. They don't talk Arabian, I don't think. Say something in Arabian, Johnny Cake. Aw, cut it out, Johnny broke in. Dally was bothering them, and when he left, they wanted us to sit with them to protect him. Against wisecracking greasers like you, probably. 2-Bit grinned. Johnny didn't usually get sassy like that. We thought we were doing good if we could get him to talk at all. Incidentally, we don't mind being called greaser by another greaser. It's kind of playful then. Hey, where is old Dally anyway? No, he went hunting some action. Booze or dames or a fight. I hope he don't get jailed again. I mean, he just got out. Oh, he'll probably find the fight, 2-Bit stated cheerfully. Well, that's why I came over. Mr. Timothy Shepard and Company are looking for whoever so kindly slashed their car's tires. And since Mr. Curly Shepard spotted Dallas doing it, well, does Dally have a blade? Not that I know of. I think he's got a piece of pipe, but he busted his blade this morning. Good. Tim will fight fair if Dally don't pull a blade on him. Dally shouldn't have any trouble. Cherry and Marcia were staring at us. Well, you don't believe in playing rough or anything, do you? A fair fight ain't rough, 2-Bit said. Hang on one second, I'm going to pause here. Yeah, you can do that, but you still have to face this direction, because you facing that...
face that way?
Yes, because you facing that way is not a good idea. Yeah.
So I have to face this way?
Yes.
So what's the point of doing that then?
I don't know, that's a you issue. A fair fight isn't rough, 2-Bit says. Blades are rough. So are chains and heaters and pool sticks and rumbles. Skin fighting isn't rough. It blows off steam better than anything. There's nothing wrong with throwing a few punches. Now, socias, they're rough. They gang up with 1 or 2, or they rumble each other with their social clubs. Us greasers usually stick together. But when we do fight among ourselves, it's a fair fight between 2. And Dally deserves whatever he gets, because slashed tires ain't no joke when you got to work to pay for them. And he got spotted too, and that was his fault. Our one rule, besides stick together, is don't get caught. I mean, he might get beat up, he might not. Either way, there's not going to be any blood feud between our outfit and Shepard's. If we needed them tomorrow, they'd show. If Tim beats Dally's head in and then tomorrow asks us for help in a rumble, yeah, we'll show. Dally was getting kicks. He got caught, he pays up. No sweat. Nathan?
Who the heck brings a pool cue to a fight?
They were real popular because the idea is it's such a hard wood that you would then break it and then you'd have the longer part of it and then you could use it as a weapon. And so oftentimes fights also started in bars, and in bars they have pool. And so oftentimes you would then break your pool stick, beat someone with it, and just take the balls and chuck it at them. You could do that too. And then the heaters and chains. That's what I'm talking about, the fact that greasers don't normally use those. They just use their hands and that's it. But there you go.
What?
Yeah, boy, Cherry said sarcastically. Real simple. Sure, Marcia said, unconcerned. If he gets killed or something, you just bury him. No sweat. You dig okay, baby. 2-Bit grinned and lit a cigarette. Anyone want a weed? I looked at 2-Bit admiringly. He sure put weed here does not mean marijuana. Marijuana was not really a thing yet. They're just referring to cigarettes. I looked at 2-Bit admiringly. He sure put things into words good. Maybe he was still a junior at 18 and a half, and maybe his sideburns were too long, or maybe he did get boozed up too much, but he sure understood things. Cherry and Marcia shook their heads at his offering of cigarettes, but Johnny and I reached for one. Johnny's color was back, and his breathing was regular, but His hand was shaking ever so slightly. A cigarette would steady it. Ponyboy, will you come with me to go get some popcorn? I jumped up. Yeah, sure. Y'all want some? I do, said Marcia. She was finishing the Coke Dally had given her. I realized then that Marcia and Cherry, they weren't alike. Cherry had said she wouldn't drink Dally's Coke if she was starving. And she meant it. It was the principle of the thing. But Marcia saw no reason to throw away a perfectly good free Coke. Me too, said Two-Bit. He flipped me a 50-cent piece. Hey, get Johnny some too. I'm buying, he added as Johnny started to reach into his jeans pocket. We went to the concession stand. As usual, there was a line a mile long, so we had to wait. Quite a few kids turned to look at us. You didn't see a kid in Grease and a associate cheerleader together often. Cherry didn't even seem to notice. Your friend, the one with the sideburns, he okay? He ain't dangerous like Dallas, if that's what you mean. Yeah, he's okay. She smiled, and her eyes showed that her mind was on something else. So Johnny, he's been hurt bad sometime, hasn't he? It was more of a statement than a question. Hurt and scared? It was the socials, I said nervously, because there were plenty of socials milling around, and some of them were giving me funny looks, as if I shouldn't be with Cherry or something. I don't like to talk about it either. Johnny getting beat up, I mean. But I started in, talking a little faster than I usually do, because I don't like to think about it either. It was almost 4 months ago. I'd walk down to the DX station to get a bottle of pop and to see Steve and soda, because they'll always buy me a couple of bottles and let me help work on the cars. I don't like to go on weekends because, well, then there's usually a bunch of girls down there flirting with soda. All kinds of girls, too, like socials. I mean, I don't care too much for girls yet. Soda says I'll grow out of it.
Soda's like me.
He did. And it was a warmish spring day with the sun shining bright, but it was getting chilly and dark by the time we started for home. We were walking because we'd left Steve's car at the station. At the corner of our block, there's a wide open field where we play football and hang out, and it's often a site for rumbles and fistfights. We were passing it, kicking rocks down the street and finishing our last bottle of Pepsi, when Steve noticed something lying on the ground. He picked it up. It was Johnny's blue jeans jacket, the only jacket he had. Looks like Johnny forgot his jacket, Steve said, slinging it over his shoulder to take it by Johnny's house. Suddenly, he stopped and examined it more carefully. There was a stain the color of rust across the collar. He looked at the ground. There were some more stains on the grass. He looked up and across the field with a stricken expression on his face. I think we all heard the low moan and saw the dark, motionless lump on the other side of the hut at the same time. Soda reached him first. Johnny was lying face down on the ground. Soda turned him over gently. I nearly got sick. Someone had beaten him badly. The rust stains that they're saying are not rust.
Blood.
Yeah, blood.
He got jumped. Like he's like
Oh, he got jumped by a girl?
They're going to talk about the fact that he got beat up by his dad with a 2x4. The 2x4 is like the chunk of wood that's 2 inches by 4 inches. So that's what they're going to be referring to
by
here.
his
in a
own
moment.
dad.
Nice. Dang.
We were used to seeing Johnny banged up. I mean, his father clobbered him around a lot. And although it made us madder than heck, we couldn't do anything about it. But those beatings had been nothing like this. Johnny's face was cut up and bruised and swollen, and there was a wide gash from his temple to his cheekbone. He'd carried that scar all his life. His white t-shirt was splattered with blood, and I just stood there, trembling with sudden cold. I thought he might be dead. Surely nobody could be beaten like that and live. Steve closed his eyes for a second, muffled a groan as he dropped on his knees beside Soda. Somehow the gang sensed what had happened. Two-Bit was suddenly there beside me, and for once his comical grin was gone and his dancing gray eyes were stormy. Derry had seen us from our porch and ran toward us, suddenly skidding to a halt. Dally was there too, swearing under his breath and turning away with a sick expression on his face. I wondered about it vaguely. Dally had seen people get killed on the streets of New York's West Side. Why did he look sick now? Johnny? Soda lifted him up and held him against his shoulder. He gave the limp body a slight shake. Hey, Johnny, Johnny didn't even open his eyes, but there came a soft question. Soda? Yeah, it's me. Come on, man, don't talk. You're going to be okay. There was a whole bunch of them. Johnny went on, swallowing, ignoring Soda's command. A blue Mustang full. I got so scared. They're going to refer to this blue Mustang. It's going to show up multiple times throughout the story. So you have an idea of what they're referring to. This is the blue Mustang he's talking about. No, it's just a guy. Blue Mustang full. I got so scared. He tried to swear, but suddenly started crying, fighting to control himself, then sobbing all the more because he couldn't. And I'd seen Johnny take a whipping with a 2x4 from his old man and never let out a whimper. That made it worse to see him break down. Soda just held him and pushed Johnny's hair back out of his eyes. It's okay, Johnny Cake. They're gone now. It's okay. Finally, between sobs, Johnny managed to gasp out his story. He'd been hunting our football to practice a few kicks when a blue Mustang had pulled up beside the lot. There were 4 Socias in it, and they caught him, and one of them had a lot of rings on his hand. That's what had caught Johnny up so badly. It wasn't just they'd beaten him half to death. He could take that. They had scared him. They threatened him with everything under the sun. Johnny was high-strung anyway, a nervous wreck from getting belted every time he turned around and from hearing his parents fight all the time. Living in those conditions might have turned someone else rebellious and bitter. It was just killing Johnny. He'd never been a coward. He was a good man in a rumble. He stuck up for the gang and kept his mouth shut good around cops. But after the night of the beating, Johnny was jumpier than ever. And I didn't think he'd ever get over it. Johnny never walked by himself after that. And Johnny, who was the most law-abiding of us, now carried in his back pocket a 6-inch switchblade. He'd use it, too, if he ever got jumped again. They'd scared him that much. He'd kill the next person who jumped him. Nobody was ever going to beat him like that again. Not over his dead body. A couple things. One, the guy with rings who beats the holy pooey out of Johnny shows up again. And it's going to be one of the things you'll recognize when he shows up, because they're going to talk about the fact that he has a whole bunch of rings on his hands. And so they are. I was trying to find pictures of dudes wearing rings, and I couldn't, so I just went with this guy. There's a picture from the earlier show, so I figured this made his hands look perfect. And then also they talk about the fact that now he goes around carrying a switchblade with him all the time. And he says if anyone ever jumps him again, what's he going to do?
Kill them.
Ooh, by the way, there is a literary term we studied at one point where they drop clues in a story before they happen. Grant?
So, please don't ignore me. Every single time.
You always write it down.
He groaned in anger.
He did groan it. And so, yeah, the fact that he now carries that switchblade with him, and the fact that he says if they ever try to jump me again, it's not going to happen, that becomes our foreshadowing.
He's probably gonna kill him.
Bruh.
I had nearly forgotten that Cherry was even listening to me, but when I came back to reality and looked at her, I was startled to find her as white as a sheet. All Socias aren't like that. You have to believe me, Ponyboy. Not all of us are like that. Sure, I said. That's like saying all you greasers are like Dallas Winston. Come on, I'll bet he's jumped a few people. I digested that. That was true. Dally had jumped people. I mean, he told us stories about muggings in New York that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. But not all of us were that bad. Cherry no longer looked sick, only sad. I'll bet you think the Socias have it made. The rich kids, the West Side Socias. I'll tell you something, Ponyboy, and it may come as a surprise. We have troubles you've never even heard of. You want to know something? She looked me straight in the eye. Things are rough all over. I believe you. We'd better get back out there with the popcorn, or Two-Bit will think I ran off with his money. We went back and watched the movie through again. Marcia and Two-Bit were hitting it off just fine. Both had the same scatterbrained sense of humor, but Cherry and Johnny and I just sat there, looking at the movie and not talking. And I quit worrying about everything and thought about how nice it was to sit with a girl without having to listen to her swear or beat her back with a club. I knew Johnny liked it too. He didn't talk to girls much. I mean, once, while Dallas was in reform school, Sylvia had started hanging on to Johnny and sweet-talking him, and Steve got hold of her and told her if she tried any of her tricks with Johnny, he'd personally beat the tar out of her. Then he gave Johnny a lecture on girls and how a sneaking little broad like Sylvia would get him into a lot of trouble. As a result, Johnny never spoke to girls much. But whether that was because he was scared of Steve or because he was shy, I couldn't tell. I got the same lecture from Two-Bit after we'd picked up a couple of girls downtown one day. I thought it was funny because girls are one subject even Derry thinks I use my head about. And it really had been funny because Two-Bit was half crocked when he gave me the lecture. And he told me some stories that about made me want to crawl under the floor or something. But he'd been talking about girls like Sylvia and the girls he and Dally and the rest picked up at drive-ins and downtown. He never said anything about the Sochi girls, so I figured it was all right to be sitting there with them, even if they did have their own troubles. I really couldn't see what Socias would have to sweat about. Good grades, good cars, good girls, Madras, Mustangs, Corvairs. Man, I thought, if I had worries like that, I'd consider myself lucky. Yeah, I know better now. Chapter 3. We get to the good stuff. I'm only going to read a couple of bits and we'll do more of Chapter 3 tomorrow, but we're getting to the fun stuff now. After the movie was over, it suddenly came to us that Cherry and Marcia, they didn't have a way to get home. Two-Bit gallantly offered to walk them home. The west side of town was only about 20 miles away.
That's a lot.
So if you're unaware, if you've ever been downtown where the circle is, that's roughly 13 to 15 miles away. And so they're like, we can just walk you home 20 miles, like walking from here to Indy. It should only take us, 6 hours. But to each their own. Yeah.
What city is it supposed to be? You know?
It's in Oklahoma. But I don't know what city in Oklahoma. I know that's where it's supposed to be because that's where the author wrote it when she said it in her hometown.
For some reason, I was thinking like it's St. Louis. Like,
Close to that area.
St. Louis.
I could see that. Yeah, I mean, East St. Louis is a pretty scary area, and here, wherever this town was,
About the west side being all.
This is like Nebraska.
it makes sense. 'Cause I mean, and so I think a lot. That's just, like our town, Fisher doesn't really have like a east side, west side, but I know like growing up in Noblesville, we definitely had that, like a north side, south side, depending on where you were from in the town. So it just sort of depends on your town and where you're from. 20 miles away, but they wanted to call their parents and have them come and get them. Two-Bit finally talked them into letting us drive them home in his car. I think they were still half scared of us, but they were getting over it though as we walked to Two-Bit's house to pick up the car. It seemed funny to me that Socias, if these girls were any example, they were just like us. They liked the Beatles and thought Elvis Presley was out, and we thought the Beatles were rank and that Elvis was tough, but that seemed the only difference to me. Of course, greasy girls would have acted a lot tougher, but there was a basic sameness, I thought. Maybe it was money that separated us. Anyway, so, if you're unfamiliar with the Beatles,
They suck. They're so bad.
shame on you. But so this is who they're talking about. The Socias like they were big fans of the Beatles, and then the Greasers were big fans of Elvis Presley. So it becomes this conversation they get into back and forth about which was better. The
I only listen to
Beatles.
Travis Scott.
Okay, thanks for letting us
Yeah,
know,
you
Charlie.
have bad music taste, but-
We'll stop
Ray
there.
has a Star Wars music.
What?
What?
What did you listen to? Where did you get that?